Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Today, we are talking about creating a proposal and creating a strategy. I got an amazing phone call today from somebody who is interested in doing business with me. And so, what I wanted to do is, I wanted to show you my thought process behind actually looking at the account, figuring out what I can do for them, giving them a reasonable expectation, really showing you the scientific approach of how we're going to get them results because before you ever accept an account, you've really got to think about if you can actually help that person. You don't want to be a scam artist like the rest of the marketing world out there. Everyone says that they can do marketing. Like when you have a phone, you can basically become a digital marketer. And I want to avoid that for you. And I want to avoid that for myself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to actually show you my thinking behind doing this. Because at this point, DevelopMark, my agency, has been around for about 8 years now. And that's a really long time. When I started the company, I was about 24 years old. Now I'm 31, and I've learned a lot during that time. And one of the things that I've really learned is there is a way to create reasonable expectations, and there is data that you should be paying attention to. And this is also a great way for people that have tried my new product, SplashDash, to show them really creative ways of utilizing it so that they can better prepare for their next conversation, whether it's a sales conversation, account management. Guys, most of the work is done in the sales and in the account management. So if you can do those things right, you're going to be able to have a lot of success long term. You're going to be able to retain clients. You're going to be able to grow your agency. There's so many people that say agencies aren't scalable, and that's just not true. You just don't understand how to sell correctly and how to manage correct expectations and how to do basic account management. So let's go into it. I actually have a presentation here pulled up for you guys, and I'm going to while I'm doing this live stream, I'm going to also be building this out so that you can actually see how I'm going to go through that. So the lead that came to us was a pest control company, and they are in Louisiana. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just my thought process of going behind this kind of stuff. The first thing that I've noticed when I started looking at the business is that the domain authority of the business is higher than average at a 20 out of 100. Now, you may be thinking 20 is really not that high. But when it comes to local, domain authority is really difficult to get because not that many websites mention local businesses. So when you're working with a client and they already have a high domain authority, you're already off to the races. Like I get excited when someone contacts me and says, "Oh, I actually already have a high domain authority." Like that makes me really excited because I already know I'm going to be able to help them with this business. If there's one thing you cannot help with clients, it's their authority. That's just unrealistic. Stop selling backlinks, stop selling off-page SEO, stop selling anything that's going to promise them more links. Like really don't even offer that as a service. You're much better off focusing on client selection and just picking customers that naturally have good authority versus trying to build it for them. I found that very difficult to do for customers in the past. So DevelopMark, we don't do anything with backlinks. We mainly do the website, the SEO, and the ads. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, SEO is backlinks. Yeah, but what are you going to do? You're going to buy them backlinks on Fiverr. You're going to buy them a bunch of these spammy links. That's not really going to move the needle. The things that are going to move the needle, I'm going to talk about in this video today. But what I'm trying to tell you is like, you want to focus on client selection. You want to pick with the customers that are already doing well because you're just going to go along with the ride for them. The clients are either going to bring you up or they're going to bring you down. And if they bring you down, trust me, they're going to go deep. If they bring you up, they're going to bring you to new heights. So I always look at domain authority as one of the main things when I start working with a customer. The other thing that I like to look at too is the client's already on Duda. So as many of you know, if you're using SplashDash, it'll tell you what the content management system is. And this isn't like this revolutionary new thing, right? Like a lot of tools do that. But the reason why I put that there is because if they're already on Duda, my comfort level and their comfort level is going to be really great because they're already using the content management system that we have. Now, if you look at the registration date of the domain, which is interesting, the domain is 28 years old. That's another key metric that I look at before I take a client on to do their digital marketing. The reason for that is because the older the domain, the more likely they are to rank in the search results for all types of keywords. The more they are to get mentioned in the LLMs for all types of keywords, now with ChatGPT and Gemini. And most importantly, the less work I'm going to have to do trying to age or prime their domain to get out of the sandbox, Google sandbox, and to get them the results because naturally older domains are going to have higher authority. If they have higher authority, I just need to make them a great branding and campaign strategy to get them results. So I'm always excited when I see that. So that looking at the business overview is great. I think this is a great opportunity. I definitely think I can help this person. If their metrics were a lot lower, I would set the expectation just a little bit differently. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to come into this situation. Am I going to come in hot and recommend these big ad budgets and recommend them these results and give these expectations that they're going to kill it with us? Or am I going to come in and say, you need a basic website, you need some basic SEO, you need your citations managed, you need a logo, you need an introductory company video. I'm trying to play it by ear here whenever I get a new lead. I'm really thinking about, am I going to give this person a high expectation of us? Or am I going to give them a low expectation of us? And guys, this is not rocket science. Let the data tell you that. If the domain authority is super high, I'm betting my kidney that I'm going to get you good results. If the domain authority is super low, I'm playing it very safe with my poker. I'm very, very safe with the cards I pull, with what I show. And I'm very careful about that information because I've been through that before. It's not a fun path to be down to promise a client who has low domain authority, low domain age, all of these SEO stats. I promise you, if there's one thing that you could do right now to hate your life in digital marketing, it's to take the wrong client. So take those words for, if you'd like, it's experience that I've gone through. The second thing that I like to look at is the domain authority over time. Now, SplashDash allows you to run this. It's called domain rating over time. So I apologize. I actually wrote this wrong. This is domain rating. For those of you that don't know, domain rating and domain authority are just two different metrics that two different software companies created. Personally, I like using domain authority, but you can use domain rating as well. And all that's telling me is their domain getting authoritative over time? Now, if you're looking at this chart, that's good news. Their domain rating is getting more authoritative over time. The reason why I like to look at that is, generally speaking, this data correlates to their business, right? The only way an authority can go up for a domain is if they're getting more mentions, they're getting higher quality backlinks, and they're sustainable over time. If you're working with a potential customers where domain authority is going down, you're going to have to consider what's going on here. Why are they losing so many links, especially if they're quality links? Why are they being mentioned less online? Guys, you want to work with the businesses that have traction, especially for somebody who's overly passionate about this stuff like I am. I'm not trying to work with people who are going to be in the gutter. I'm trying to work with people who have opportunity. The 50% of the work that you're going to do is finding the people that you're actually passionate about working with. It's not about the money, right? You're going to make tons of money. Don't even worry about the money. It's more so like, can you see yourself getting up every single day and wanting to support this business? And if you can, you're going to have a rock star situation. So the reason I'm making this video is because I'm trying to show you guys what the perfect situation looks like and how to articulate that. Because then when you have to actually propose to them, you don't want to say the wrong thing. You want to show up with the data. And that's what I'm going to show you here on today's video. So domain rating over time is looking good. That's growing over the past 2 years. Then I like to look at sentiment. And sentiment basically looks at all of the reviews and allows me to see, at the grand scheme of things, what people like and what people don't like. Something that I noticed right away is Ray. So when I talk to the customer, that's going to be a point of conversation that I'm going to make. What about Ray is special? And from there, it allows me to really understand who that is. And that might be somebody that we can mention on the website and highlight on the website. Because then if the customer goes, well, Ray's actually this guy that we love and he's been here a long time and he's a great technician, but he's being mentioned a lot in the reviews, that gives me like massive marketing ammo. I can't even tell you the power that gives me, because if there's any signs of success, you need to exploit that as much as you can. So I like to use the sentiment to see if things are being mentioned and how they're being mentioned. So just by looking at this, right, I'm going to go, okay, let's talk about Ray. Let's talk about Cody. Those are two individuals that are commonly being mentioned in your reviews. Let's talk about the problems that you solve. Let's talk about Connor. And this gives me direct information of how I should be referencing everything on their website. If you're just going in there and guessing about what people may want to see on their website, that's a failing strategy, guys. Go in with data, go in with confidence, and tell them your plan. They're not hiring you to tell you what to do. If they wanted to do that, they would just do it themselves. And in fact, this client, the reason why we're even in conversation is because one of the companies they're working with, they feel like they have to project manage and babysit. And so they actually are just taking it upon themselves to update things themselves. Guys, I cannot be clear enough about this. And I say this on every single live. The more you can be consultative with the customer, the more you can be outcome driven, the more you can try to predict what they're going to want in the future, the less revisions you can have for yourself when you're working with them, the more successful you're going to be. That's value. I'm going to tell you the difference between talent and a commodity. Talent, you don't have to tell what to do. Talented people know what to do and they execute it. Commoditized people, unfortunately, you have to tell them what to do. Now, there's room in the world for both, If you want to enter the talent field, however, pay close attention because this is exactly how I do it. So that's what I'll do. I'll look at that information for the sentiment to really clearly understand what I'm going to put in their website, what keywords I'm going to target directly on their web page. Then I like to look at top pages. Now, the more and more LLMs are becoming a popular thing, the more that people are finding information through the LLMs, the more I'm starting to see pages don't really get that much traffic. It's really not that big of a surprise, however, because people are finding information through social media, they're finding information through ChatGPT. So why in the world are you making these gigantic websites? Are you doing it just because like you feel like you have to sell the client more pages? Are you doing it because that's what the traditional SEO people told you to do, like I have in the past? Are you doing it because that's just the way things have been done? Those are all really bad excuses to make these gigantic websites. The websites we've been making that have been getting the most results are actually websites that are a lot smaller, still on the client's primary domain. I don't believe in landing pages. I think that's absolutely stupid. And when I say landing pages, I mean off of the main website. What I'm trying to tell you is a lot of the data when I pull this, that there's websites that have 23 pages with no traffic, 33 pages total. A majority of the traffic's going to 10 pages. Make a 10-page website. Save yourself 13 pages, lower that delivery for the client, and focus on what's going to get them results in a shorter time period. I can't stress that enough. They're not paying you for pages. They're not paying you for what they think is right. They're paying you for data and what's going to get them results. So if you can save time on some of these things that you think you have to do just because it's a formality, save yourself the time because they're holding you accountable regardless. So something really, really critical there that we're seeing. So in this case, I'm going to recommend that we shorten down the website and most likely cut a bunch of pages because they're getting no traffic, and we'll redirect them. Looking at their top keywords, they actually rank pretty well for a lot of their keyword phrases. And you'll see that when we look at the maps insights. The top keywords tells me what I need to preserve and what I don't need to preserve. If they're ranking well for search terms inside of the results, typically I'll keep the URLs the same and I'll try to preserve those rankings without changing any URL structure. A lot of the times that's a really good reason as to why you're going to keep a URL structure the same. And primarily it's because you're already ranking well for this. Let's not change that. You don't want to migrate a website over to your company or whatever it is that you're doing if you're doing websites, and then all of a sudden find out that the client has lost a ton of rankings. You don't want to do that. So the way to avoid that is to keep the URL structure similar for the keywords they're getting a lot of clicks for. If you go into Google Search Console, in this case, I don't have access to any of this customer's information. If you go into Google Search Console and there's no traffic on any of the pages, just cut them all. You're not going to lose anything. Don't worry so much about technical SEO when it comes to local businesses, especially businesses that have 33 pages on their website. Worry about technical SEO if you're working enterprise, but I don't think anybody that watches my channel works enterprise. What I'm trying to tell you is that if you're focused on technical SEO, you're going to lose. You're not going to get the client's results. You've got to do enough technical SEO to get by. You've got to do enough technical SEO to pass the little on-site checks that are happening, but that's not what's going to get you results. I want to make that very clear. We are in an anti-technical SEO world right now. We are very much in a creative, artsy, driven, conversion-focused world, and I'm going to teach you exactly how we're going to approach that. So avoid the technical SEO as much as you can, but preserve the top keyword phrases. Now, with every local business, seasonality is something that you've really got to sell to, okay? If you're convincing somebody to do business, you better understand their seasonality. So in this case, I'm using SplashDash and I'm pulling up the seasonality powered by Ahrefs of all of the different areas that they do business. So you can see for the general keyword pest control, the seasonality looks pretty good. In January, it starts going up, and then in November, it starts dropping. That's going to be a consistent of our ad spend when we start marketing for this business or brand. We are going to have that consistently. There's some businesses that are extremely seasonal. Like you'll see some of the charts that I've pulled up for some of the different services that they offer. And so when you're setting an advertising budget for a company or a brand, you're going to want to think about where to allocate the budget and how much to allocate the budget and when to allocate the budget. That information before your sales presentation is going to be absolutely critical to convincing them to give you money to do this for them. It's going to make them feel like you understand what they're talking about. They're not going to have to explain a lot of this information that you're talking about. So if I were to look at this chart, it looks pretty consistent throughout the year. And so I would probably recommend in this case where we are going to recommend them consistent advertising spend long term. Now, as you can see, this has pretty severe seasonality. Very different from the pest control I just showed you, where you had some seasonality. This one has some pretty extreme seasonality in July. You can see it's consistent between the 2 years, 2024 and 2025. Now, guys, just to be very clear, all this data is doing is it's taking the search volume for each and every single month for that category and showing you a line graph. It's not doing anything revolutionary, but simple things don't have to be revolutionary. Sometimes it needs to just be an insight that you provide that allows you to get the customer to trust you that much more because you're prepared. So in this case, it would make a lot of sense to have our campaigns ready to run for May to July, because July is where that's going to peak and then it starts dropping off. So by the time July comes, in this case, 2026, we better have rankings for bed bugs. We better have creative for bed bugs. We better have video ads ready to run for bed bugs, because that's going to be the seasonality there. So we really want to focus in on that. Then we have termites. And so this is a similar situation, except the season is a little bit earlier. And so we may want to start advertising that a little bit earlier compared to the one before that. Now, you guys kind of see how I'm going with this, right? Because DevelopMark is industry agnostic, which means we do not work with one type of industry. We work with multiple types of industry. Seasonality reports are something that we love to run because it gives me a good insight of when to start promoting this. Now, customers are going to tell you that they know their seasons, but in reality, I'm listening to the customer 50% of the time. 50% of the time, I'm listening to myself and data. And so I've got to know the customer's perspective, but also what's really happening in the search engines. And I'll tell you, Ahrefs is a really good tool to get that information. They crawl the internet a lot. Any of the tools can do that, but SplashDash allows you to package it, and it's focused on local, so you can see the seasonality very clearly. So if you're selling local, SplashDash is by far the best tool to use for that. So if you're interested in trying out, go to the website and check it out. By the way, guys, if you guys have any questions during the stream, if you guys ask them, I'll answer them live. So if at any time you have a question about what we're doing here, feel free to ask. So let's go to rodents. This is another similar situation where we have some seasonality. You can see it starts to go up as we start to get into the fall, which makes sense because rodents like to be inside of people's houses when it gets cold out. So I'll budget a little bit for that campaign when we start to build the actual proposal out. Now, the business has 2 locations. So when you're working with clients that have multiple locations, you want to really think about each location as its own business, because each location has its own Google business profile, its own page on the website. Typically, they have their own team. Typically, they have some different services. So when I work with a business that has multiple locations, at DevelopMark, we work with some businesses that have 18 locations, 20 locations. And so the approach that I found that is best is treating each location like its own business. The phone number might ring somewhere different. The contact form might ring somewhere different. So you've really got to treat it like its own business. So when we do the market analysis, as I'm going to show you, we look at each of the different markets. So this is a really cool report that you can run inside of SplashDash. It's called the Local Ad Spend Intelligence Report. And basically, this allows me to see all of the ads that an advertiser is running in search inside of that area. Now, the good thing here is you can see that advertisers are healthily advertising in this area. And what I like to tell customers, and I'll show you something really cool in just a second, is if people are actively advertising, that means it's working. And so it's no surprise that people love or really want advertising to work because they know it works. The real question is are you the right person to get it to work for them? Because unfortunately, you can't just throw money at something and get it to work. You can't just throw money at a website. You can't just throw money at a brand. It's much more strategic than that. It's much more spiritual than that. It's much deeper than that. If you could just throw money at a problem and get it to fix, millions of people wouldn't have cancer anymore. But that's just not the case. There's so much more than that. And so what I'm trying to tell you is there's some swag to it. So if advertisers are running ads in the area, in this market estimated to be $148,000 in total spend per month, you could probably assume that it's working. Now, when we look at the competitors in the area, franchises are what's prominent in the area. Now, imagine you were my prospect right now, and I said, okay, franchises are gigantic in this area. Granted, in this industry, franchises are gigantic pretty much everywhere. That's what you're now selling against. So I'm going to use that as creative direction to sell against. If those companies are spending this much money in this area, that's usually a good signal to me that this is working really well in that area. Now, inside of SplashDash, I can actually see their ads. If you look at some of these ads, some of them have been running for 444 days. That tells me that they're working. I can also see the creative, so that gives me some creative inspiration. But I got to stress this, guys. That also tells me what not to do. By looking at the company's creatives and the competition's creatives in that area, that shows me what not to do. A lot of the times, I want to do things that are outside of people's comfort zones, and I don't want to look like the rest of the competition. because any AI software can make something just like these pictures right here, and you just look like the rest of the companies out there. So you may want to add a little curiosity to your AI pictures. And I have a future stream coming where I'm preparing. It's a future video, I'm sorry, where I talk a lot about AI creative and what we're doing at DevelopMark with that. So, you really want to focus on ads that are going to be different than the competition. So in SplashDash, you can see all the competitors' ads in that local area. Now, ironically, they're ranking well inside of the local search results. As you can see, they have 292 reviews, which is far less than the result that's ranking number 6, which just goes to tell you that a lot of the times the local search results are not just dependent on reviews. However, the consumer's choice is heavily dependent on the reviews. So it's really critical that when we run this data, we're telling the customer what the average is and setting that as a goal or setting that to be number 1. The consumer has a choice. And so if that consumer has a choice, if we live in capitalism, that consumer can pick where to spend their money. And so they're going to do so by making decisions, by shopping around before they ever call somebody. Your best bet to get that lead, I can drive you as much traffic as you want, is to get more reviews. Now, people are wondering, how do I get my customers to get more reviews? Well, you can't just tell them because that does nothing. That's like telling somebody, you should breathe more. Of course I should get more reviews. Of course I should go to the gym. Of course I should wake up early. But how do I do that? I found the best way is to give them an average. And so what I'll do is I'll look at a local marketplace like this and I'll go, okay, your average in this local market is X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to share my screen just to show you actual SplashDash report because I cut it off of here. So this is actually inside of SplashDash, and then I'm going to go into the marketplace overview as I'm showing you right now. And in this area, as you can see, the average star rating is 4.9. The average review count is 990. And so, oh, I'm sorry, this is the second location, not the first location. Let me go to the second location. So if I go to this one, the average review is even worse. It's 999. If your company is not 292, you're 697 below the average review count. Now, luckily, this is a service type business, and service type businesses have been shown to get reviews rapidly. But think about that. If you're guaranteeing, or not guaranteeing, but you're telling this customer that they're going to get results, and they are significantly below the average amount of reviews for all the competitors combined. And by the way, those competitors are found by SplashDash doing a Google search, finding all their Google business locations, putting it into a table, and giving you that data. Although we're ranking number 2 for this search term, right? You can see that there. Although we're ranking number 2, we're still way below average on the reviews. So what I'll do is I'll benchmark this as the review goal for the customer. That way, we have something that we're clearly working towards, and that's what's going to get you results. That's what's going to allow you to show them clarity that you are paying attention to this stuff and you have a clear answer for them. So I like to look at this information and make that a key point of conversation. So it's one thing to tell them that they need to do it. It's another thing to actually give them a goal. So that they're ranking well in the area without doubt. Although the number 2, they need to increase reviews, and we're going to show them exactly how to do that. Next thing is for this location, people really, really, really enjoy the technicians. I can't even stress this to you guys. So you look at this data, right? And all this data is doing, as you guys can see from SplashDash, is it's basically just taking the reviews from that business and creating a word cloud for you to take a look at that looks like this. Now, is this Gonzalez? This is Gonzalez, yeah. So I'm going to pull up the actual report inside of SplashDash. And what I'm going to show you is when you look at this data, right? They have 4.9 reviews, very positive. When you look at the data, you have a lot of, oh, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. Let me go back to that one. When you look at the data for the customer overview and you look at this information, you'll see that a lot of the things that people are mentioning are the technicians themselves. Now, when you go to the website, there's no actual pictures of them there. It's kind of shocking. And that's one of those things where it's like, they're not getting results. And then you're like, okay, well, here's what the data's saying. Clearly, there should be people there. On one of our pest control clients, this is what I'm going to show you really quick. You can see that when we do the sentiment analysis, that's how we decide what to put on the website. Guys, we don't decide what to put on the website with a wand. We're not like some fairy that's like, here's what I think will work. Ooh, that's just stupid. Don't be dumb. Use the data. Tell them, hey, you want to take team headshots? Well, you need to. If you want to work with us, this is our non-negotiables. This is what's going to work. This is what your market values. I'm not just going to guess. We're definitely not going to guess what you think is right, because what you think is right as a business owner is clouded by the 4 walls you're in every single day. we're going to use data of what real human beings are saying. And what better marketing material is there than actually looking at what customers have said in the past about that business? So in here, I'll start scanning through this information and looking to see, okay, why do people love Connor? Well, Connor is going to be the person that's mentioned on the website first because that's what customers are resonating with. And I can't stress this enough, guys. If you're having success somewhere and you're having momentum in a small area of your business, you're probably going to have a lot of momentum if you keep pushing that, right? It's like an artist. You release an album, there's a little bit of success. You release your next album, you're much more likely to get a lot more success. You're building momentum. So I'm going to build momentum around the people inside of the company because in the sentiment, you can see that's clearly what people are valuing. Technician, Ray, Connor, polite. Make the website human. Humanize the website is what I'm trying to say. So when we built our actual website here, an example of a pest control company that we've done, we've really made sure that a creative on the website is focused on, in this case, pricing was big. In this case, these were the big things, the text, the inspections, the actual technicians themselves. These are things that are non-negotiable when we start working with the client. It becomes much more humanized when we use that sentiment analysis report. So want to make that very clear that when we run that and we take a look at that, we like to look at these themes. In this case, it was they like technicians, they like their questions answered, they have a termite problem, and they like politeness, right? So very critical there. Now looking at the second location, very similar situation. The only difference here is that this area, there's a slightly less advertising spend. And we look and see the franchises aren't as prominent in the area, but they still are very prominent, as you can see towards the top. So when we look at the actual ranking in the actual area, it's looking very similar. They're ranking very well, but the reviews in this case is probably even more dramatic. So the average is probably about the same, but we're ranking lower on that spectrum there. And so if I set that average as a goal for people to rank towards, I'm going to continuously pressure the customer as their consultant, as their advisor, who's also executing the work to get to that average. And then we're going to celebrate when they actually reach that average. It's a massive moment in a business for them to reach a goal like that, because just by doing that, they're increasing their lead flow. They're increasing the valuation of their company. They're keeping up with customer and employee morale. These are huge things, but they need something to work towards, like a North Star. So I like to use this data to accomplish that. Then let's look at the sentiment of this actual area too. Very similar. The only difference here is you can see an inspection tech spray. So for this area, which is the second location, I might include some of those keywords and focus on that stuff inside of the actual creative to get them more results. If you can speak the customer's language, in this case, SplashDash searched their area, picked up a bunch of the keywords that was being mentioned in the reviews, and then put up a word cloud for me to see, it's going to give me a great way to make sure that we're targeting data and we're not just saying what we feel or what we think. So that's going to be really helpful when we start working on the creative for the customer. Then we looked at the ads in the specific area. You guys will probably notice in the last location, there were ads that were running for 440 days. In this area, the ads weren't running as long for the top advertiser. In this case, it was a company called Terminex. So 260 days active. I could tell you this, guys, if a company has been running an ad for an extended period of time like that, it's probably because that ad is performing. If it wasn't performing, they probably wouldn't have run it for that long. And so what's making that ad perform is several key factors. The first one is repetition. People are seeing this brand over and over and over again. If you guys are interested, I've made videos about Facebook ads in the last 2 days, and that really goes through frequency and repetition. Number two is customers really like the ad. That's another reason why a company will continue to run the ad, because it's performing. So when you're looking at this data, it's really healthy to start looking at which ads are working and which ads are not, and then optimizing your campaign towards that. That doesn't mean you steal them. That doesn't mean you copy them. In fact, if they're saying this, I recommend you go against it. Or if they're showing this, I recommend you show something different. Because if you start showing the same thing, you're just going to look like the same company over and over and over again. And the consumer is just going to be like, you're really not going to stick out. So our goal is to really stick out with the sentiment data that I've been showing you. Now, when it comes to budgeting, this is my favorite part of really understanding the math of when we're working with the business. So let's go through some key values here. And I want to really explain these here to you so that you can become better at what you do. You can become better at your craft so that you don't get bullied around by the world and you love digital marketing as I do. So LTV, right? What is that? Well, that is basically how much that business is going to make over the term of a customer. In this case, the LTV is very high. Developed market's very high people will typically stick around for a long period of time. So acquiring that customer is one of the most important things that you can do. Now, I want to make this very clear to you guys. Some people think getting a customer is just getting a paycheck. And unfortunately, those people probably aren't winning in business. Getting a customer is getting that customer for a long, extended period of time that pays people salaries. That's getting a review from a customer. That's potentially getting a video testimonial from a customer. And that's getting a referral from a customer. So the people that understand business the most are people that understand it's all about lifetime value and it's all about net promoter score. If you guys are not familiar with what net promoter score is, it's basically a metric that allows you to see how much someone is willing to recommend you. So in this case, if I look at net promoter score and I show you this little data here, net promoter score is one of the most critical things that you can do, because once you've acquired that customer, you've now got to get that customer to recommend you. And how do you do that? Well, a key thing is paying your people fair amounts of dollars so that they care about your customers. If you're in business, guys, you can't be a cheapskate. How do you not be a cheapskate? It's very simple. Keep your lifestyle towards a minimum. Now, if you have kids and you have financial responsibilities and you've done that before you came into business, it is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about that. But if you have the opportunity to actually not be a cheapskate, keep your financial responsibilities at a minimum, you're going to be able to invest more into your customers. If you're like me and you started doing well and you started making money, don't be stupid with it. I wasn't stupid with it. I keep my expenses extremely little. Most of my funds goes back into DevelopMark, because when I go to sell DevelopMark, if I ever do sell DevelopMark, right now we're doing about $2 million per year in revenue. Our EBITDA is pretty high because we're a marketing agency with retainers. You're going to get a lot more money. So invest in your company as much as you can until you do have other financial responsibilities. So you can increase your net promoter score. You can increase the lifetime value of your customers. You can increase your customer base if you don't have all this overhead, because you can invest back into those customers. And for those of you that are watching this and are doing marketing, guys, this is the most powerful message I can give you, is that your next customer is coming from your customer. Your next customer isn't coming from a cold call. Your next customer isn't coming from an ad. Your next customer isn't coming from Google search. It's coming from your customers that you're delivering value for. David Ogilvy, the advertising legend, I recommend reading his book, has basically said in a lot of his books that he's written that the advertising company that needs to get customers is not an advertising company. People will send you business. So really focusing on maximizing lifetime value with the customer. So let's take a look at the next metric, which is retention. Very clear. If you're in marketing, retention is key. How do you do that? Provide a good service. On average, how much are people going to pay you per month? I like to know that. And by the way, guys, these are questions that I ask the customer directly, so I want to show you realistic data. And then the CAC target, the CAC, is customer acquisition cost. So that is, how much would your business pay to acquire a customer? If you don't know that metric, you should not be advertising. Because if you're not willing to pay for a customer, how are you going to grow? Think about that yourself. If you had to sit back, close your eyes, take a deep breath through your nose, out your mouth, use your stomach while you're breathing, that's how true meditation works. Think about how much you would be willing to pay for a customer to walk into your door right now, whatever room you're sitting in or wherever you are, and literally say, I want to give you money to do services. I don't care how much it costs. How much would you pay for that? That's what the customer acquisition cost is. You really want to focus in on that. Then the close ratio. As you can see, most businesses are going to be at a 33%. So 35% makes sense. The maximum ad spend per customer is $125. So we need to land a customer for $125. Now, I want to be very clear, guys. When you're calculating customer acquisition cost, you're calculating that through all the marketing machines that are going on. So 125 is absolutely ridiculous to acquire a customer from ads. That's very difficult to do. But when you combine that with the brand, the trucks, those SEO, the website chat, you take that full budget, that's what you get for the customer acquisition cost. That's a very realistic number. And then, of course, we want to take into consideration, if I pay $1,000 to get a customer and the customers pay me $1,000 a month, the first month I've gotten my money back from that customer, the rest of that lifetime value is in profit. So realistically speaking, you should take 2 or 3 payments from the customer to acquire that customer. That's usually a healthy number. So for DevelopMark, if we charge $1,000 a month to manage someone's digital marketing, we should be paying $3,000 to get a customer. I now know what I'm willing to spend on advertising to get a customer. You guys see how this works? It's very straightforward when you start thinking about the numbers in a more exclusive way. So with that being said, I'm going to let you guys know how this goes. I have a meeting with this company in a couple of weeks, And from there, I'm going to use this information to create a proposal, a plan, and then we'll execute it going forward. I'll see you guys in the next video.